I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Thursday, September the 26th, 2013. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said yesterday that Israel and the Palestinians have agreed to step up peace talk efforts and expand the role of the U.S. in those talks. Speaking to donors who support the Palestinian Authority, Kerry said, "We have agreed now in the last week, when I have met with both President Abbas and Prime Minister Netanyahu, we have agreed now to intensify these talks." Kerry said further, "We have agreed that the American participation should be increased somewhat in order to try to help facilitate." The Secretary of State also said that 2 tracks were running in the peace talks, the first between Israel's negotiators Tzipi Livni and Yitzhak Molcho and Palestinian negotiators Saeb Erekat and Mohammed Shtayeh, and a second track between PA President Mahmoud Abbas, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Kerry and U.S. President Barack Obama. Kerry said of the second track, "As we think appropriate, as we need to move the process, we will be consulting among each other and working to move this process forward." Jewish leaders here in the U.S. sent a letter yesterday to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, urging him to strike a positive tone and gather support for a 2-state solution in his address to the UN General Assembly, which is scheduled for today. The letter, which was organized by the Israel Policy Forum, was signed by Jewish leaders across the political and religious spectrum. The letter also urged Abbas to make public his opposition to a right of return and his agreement to a demilitarized Palestinian state. The letter noted that last month Abbas reportedly told a private delegation from Israel's Meretz Party that signing a peace agreement with Israel will signal the end of the conflict, and that claims that the Palestinians would still demand Israeli cities like Haifa, Acre, and Sfat were not true. The letter said making such statements publicly to the entire international community and emphasizing the Palestinians' people's willingness to live in peace with Israel would be important steps to improve the environment affecting the peace process. It would reinforce that the Palestinian leadership has a responsible strategy for courageously forging a lasting peace with Israel. IPF Board Chair Peter Joseph said the goal of the letter was to demonstrate the broad base of support among American Jews for a 2-state solution, as well as their profound desire for courageous leadership by all parties to bring about this outcome. Ynet reports that Israel announced yesterday that it is easing some of its restrictions on the West Bank and Gaza Strip as it negotiates a final peace deal with the Palestinians. Minister of International Relations Yuval Steinitz said that 5,000 new work permits were being issued for Palestinians to work in Israel, and that the opening hours of the key crossing at the Allenby Bridge would be extended. Also that new imports of some building materials would be allowed entry into Gaza. Steinitz told reporters after a meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, "We have an interest in a strong, viable, prosperous Palestinian economy. A better economic climate might help to create a better political climate." He added, "And a strong Palestinian economy is good for Israel, it's good for our economy, it's good for the general atmosphere." Iranian President Rouhani called today for Israel to put its alleged nuclear arms under international control. Rouhani made the comments at a UN nuclear disarmament conference ahead of a meeting between Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Mohammad Zarif with U.S. Secretary of State Kerry and ministers from Britain, China, France, Germany, and Russia. Rouhani said Israel, the only non-party to the Non-Proliferation Treaty in this region, should join there too without any further delay. Rouhani also commended the, quote, "valuable contribution of nuclear weapon-free zones to international peace and security," which he called a shared ideal for us all. He said almost 4 decades of international efforts to establish nuclear weapon-free zones have regrettably failed, and urgent practical steps toward the establishment of such a zone are necessary. And while Israel has never officially acknowledged that it possesses nuclear weapons, both the U.S. and Israeli officials have maintained that a nuclear arms-free zone in the Middle East could not be a reality until there was broad Arab-Israeli peace and until Iran curbed its nuclear program. Meanwhile, semi-official Iranian news agency Fars claimed that President Rouhani's comments made during a recent interview with CNN's Christiane Amanpour were mistranslated and that he never acknowledged that there was, in fact, a Holocaust. Fars charged that CNN published misleading subtitles for sentences which were never said. As we reported to you yesterday, Rouhani was quoted in the CNN interview as saying, "I am not a historian," and that when it comes to speaking of the dimensions of the Holocaust, it is the historians that should reflect on it. But in general, he said, "I can tell you that any crime that happens in history against humanity, including the crime the Nazis committed towards the Jews, as well as non-Jewish people, was reprehensible and condemnable as far as we are concerned." Fars claims no such words were ever spoken by Rouhani and demanded a retraction and apology from CNN. Meanwhile, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad claimed today that his country has even more advanced weapons in its arsenal. During an interview with the Hezbollah-affiliated Lebanon-based Al-Akbar newspaper, the Syrian leader said, "Originally, we produced chemical weapons in the 1980s as a deterrent to Israel's nuclear capabilities. Adding today, we have weapons that are far more important and sophisticated and that can blindside Israel in the blink of an eye." Assad also charged that the U.S. wasn't truly concerned about ridding Syria of its chemical weapons to protect Syrian civilians, but rather that its goal was to act in Israel's favor. Assad said they wanted to change the balance of power to protect Israel, but we turned the table on them and now the ball is in their court. Jewish establishments in India have tightened security in and around their businesses. Local police urged the establishment to heighten their security following the interrogation of Indian Mujahideen co-founder Yassin Bakhtal by the National Investigation Agency in New Delhi. According to New Delhi television, Bakhtal told investigators that Jewish establishments in Mumbai have been surveyed by Indian Mujahideen members for possible terrorist strikes. And the Hindustan Times said that the Islamist militant group reportedly was trying to seize Jewish hostages in order to trade them for terrorists. The police in India have advised Jewish establishments to deploy security guards, install security cameras, and issue ID cards for people wishing to gain entry. They've also been told not to allow parking around their establishments. The Union for Reform Judaism has awarded grants to congregations in 17 cities across the U.S. to offer a free 3-session class for beginners, Jewish or not, that explores the topics of Jewish spirituality, ethics, and community values. According to the URJ, A Taste of Judaism is intended to pique the interest of all who are searching for an access point to Jewish life. URJ Senior Vice President Rabbi Jonah Pesner said, "Experience shows that many people coming from truly diverse backgrounds find meaning and purpose by exploring Jewish life." He said, "We are thrilled to help local Jewish communities open their doors wide and provide this critical entry for all those who are seeking and will find a connection." Tonight on L'Chaim, Mark Golub hosts a roundtable on the situation in Syria and how the U.S. should act. Participants include Stephen Boehm of the American Jewish Committee, Shai Franklin of the Institute on Religion and Public Policy, Fordham Law Professor Thane Rosenbaum, and Middle East analyst and commentator Micah Halpern. That's tonight's L'Chaim at 9 p.m. here on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Thursday, September the 26th, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader, wishing you a joyous Simchat Torah, Chag Sameach.